me, what's going on for you and how could I help?
Yeah, so I scored a 171 in July. So basically, I'm going to take another exam this August. I'm just looking to learn more about like testing strategies for like 170 plus scores. I know like obviously, there are a lot of testing books out there, and I just feel like they offer such generic, advice, and it just doesn't appeal to me anymore. So I like to hear, any insights from you on how to improve like reading comprehension and logical reasoning. I also have my own questions, so if you'd like to hear some of them, like that would also be helpful too.
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to take your questions. Regarding your first question, though, about strategies for top scores, what would you say is your biggest challenge right now? Because I'm not looking to simply give more generic advice, even if it were generic advice for those aiming for top scores. I want to have a kind of conversation that only you and I could have, getting into your personal struggles to give you the insights that you need in particular to improve your score.
Yeah, so I think that also depends on, like my questions, because my questions are really just related to my struggle right now. So my first struggle is, time pressure. I can finish a session perfectly, in like 35-minute section. But when I'm, in the real exam, like I couldn't finish, maybe like 2 or like 3 questions for each, section. So I don't know, like if it's because I'm nervous or, it's just because I'm not like familiar with the test enough. But it's just really strange. I don't know if you have any suggestions for that.
Sure, I do. Yeah. So I would guess it's not related to you being familiar enough with the exam. I mean, you said you scored a 171 on the actual thing.
Yeah.
So you obviously have high proficiency. And I would imagine that the questions you're getting wrong could simply be because they're difficult questions.
Yes, that is correct. But like for the July LSAT, I just remember, how I feel like I probably wasted some time in like certain questions. But like when I get into maybe the 25th or 26th question, I'm just running out of time. So I don't know, if you have any testing strategies for just really not waste any time on the easy questions, or, just really be mindful of the time.
Okay. Yeah. So let me ask you then, do you feel like you're wasting time on the easy questions?
Well, I just felt like I was really stressed and I didn't want to get anything wrong. So I definitely spent more time than I would normally do on a practice section, because I just really wanted to get everything 100% right. And it turned out like that I wasted too much time on like reviewing the things that I already felt confident about. Yeah, but I don't know how to stop it because like I just really wanted to get everything 100% right.
Okay, so it sounds like you already know the problem then. And you wouldn't be alone in that, by the way. A lot of folks will double check and triple check the easier ones. But as you said, there is a cost.
Yeah. Yeah, so I have some questions regarding reading comprehension, because I would say that's my most unpredictable section.
Well, let's get there in a moment, but I want to stick with this for one moment because I think this is important for your logical reasoning performance. As we said, there's a cost, right? If you double check and triple check the easier ones, you then lose time for the more difficult ones. So how might you change your approach deliberately to account for that with timed logical reasoning sections, whether in isolation or in the context of a full exam?
I feel that it's also, I'm lacking, confidence in myself. Because I just remember, when I do those easy questions, maybe it's hard for some other people, but I would just kept self-doubting. I was thinking, oh, did I actually get it right? Or is it going to be a, so-called stupid mistake? So I just don't know maybe I should calm myself down like before I do it, or like maybe I should just, really have confidence in myself. I don't know.
There are a lot of things that you could do before taking a timed exam. You could do a handful of warm-up questions to boost your confidence, to run through some easy problems just so that you get into that flow. You could take a look at your 171 score from July to show yourself that you've got this. Take a look at your other practice test scores that were high leading up to the July exam or to your upcoming exam to show yourself again that you've got this. Or as an exercise, you could aim to do the first 10 questions in 10 minutes and just trust your gut on those. And know that you're a 170 plus scorer. You've got the proof already. So those first handful of questions, the first 5, the first 10, they're not really meant for you. What I mean by that is they're meant to separate people, let's say below 150 from those above 150. But if you're already significantly above 150, your odds of getting those wrong are quite low. They're meant to separate the people who have the basics down from those who don't have the basics down. But they're not meant to challenge you in particular. The tougher questions will separate those in the 160s from those in the 170s, which then gets a lot more nuanced, a lot more challenging. But the first 10 questions, for the most part, aren't about that.
Yeah, I definitely spent more time like for questions ranging from 10 to 16 because they're like medium questions, it's really easy for me to get it right. But sometimes, if you read the prompt wrong, like you can also get it wrong. It's like, it's kind of like, it's really just, I didn't pay enough attention, then I would get it wrong. I don't know, like, I feel like, when somebody doesn't pay attention, is either because, the way they distribute, the so-called like mental resources, where it's either like you are not familiar enough with, the process, or you're not familiar enough with, the question type. So I would just keep doing what I'm doing right now, where I just drill single question based on difficulties. I think that should make me overcome my fear. Yeah.
Well, I'm not so sure about that, actually. So I'm going to push back a little bit because you scored a 171. Familiarity may not be your issue. How many hours would you say you've invested in your LSAT prep?
You mean like started from beginning?
Starting from the beginning.
I would say like a year, because I wanted to apply last year, but I didn't get like a good enough score. I was like scoring around like 162. And I really wanted to get into a top 14 school. So, like somebody told me like, oh, why don't you just wait and, really study for this exam and then take another exam. And then, I really took the time to study, like, drill down the basics. And then, eventually, I scored a 171, which is in the range of my score, because on my practice exam, I was scoring between like 173 to like 170. So, yeah.
So you put in a year, and was that 5 hours a week or on average, or more than that?
I'll say like
would it look
1 to 2 hours a day.
For a year?
Yeah, but like I also took breaks, for a month or two here or there, because of the holidays, or, going to like a summer vacation. Yeah, but normally I would just do like, like 1 or 2 sections per day. And I would just, do some reviews on like things I got wrong.
Sure. So, I mean, obviously over the course of an entire year, other things will come up here and there.
Yeah.
My point though is that overall, you put in a lot of time to this. So
yes,
I think we have to give you credit for that. You're not simply familiar with this exam. You know this exam intimately. And you may not be getting perfect 180s, but nobody gets a 180 every single time. So you are familiar. I don't know that familiarity is the problem.
Well, then I don't know what it is then.
Well, as we said, you could be getting difficult questions wrong simply because they're difficult. But another thing you've also raised is the idea that you may second guess yourself a little bit too much, especially on the easier questions, which is then costing you time later on the tougher questions that actually require that attention. So my challenge for you is blast through those easy questions, trust your gut on them, build up a time bank you can apply to the tougher questions later in the section.
I see. Okay, I will do that. Okay.
Now, what about reading comp?
Yes, so for reading comprehension, that's also a section that I suffer a lot from the time pressure on. So English is not my first language, and so it took me a long time to really, get improved on like doing reading comprehension. Like I was scoring like constantly around like 10. Like no, I was like getting like 10 or 12 wrong in one section, but then now like it came down to like 0 to 4. But then I usually spend like 3 to 5 minutes on a passage, and most of the times I get through questions really quickly because I spend enough time on the passage. But however, like when the questions are also really lengthy and difficult, it took me a long time to get through, especially the difficult questions would ask you like, oh, like how to strengthen this author's reasoning in a certain paragraph, or what is the analogy, like which one of the following answer choices is an analogy of like for example, like something in a passage. I always have a hard time on answering those questions. It always took me like 2.5 minutes on like doing these questions, and like 60% of the time I would get it right, but 40% of the time I would get it wrong. So I don't know if you have any suggestions on that.
Sure. What's your reading comp approach like?
Yeah, so I would read the passage first, and I don't underline a lot because my approach is really coming down to, how to comprehend a passage, like, in the best way, where, like, I would try to piece the information in a logically coherent order, because I know like a lot of times they try to like jumble like the information, or they put the information in a disorderly way. And to me, it was just really important to use my own language to make it in a logical order. Like, oh, what is the premises, or what is the evidence, and then what is the author trying to prove, trying to say. And that really helped me a lot. And also, like, I watched your videos on, reading comprehension. And you mentioned that, like, you had to dig deeper in all the details so that you can notice all the nuances. But, I was following that. But, like, I was just also, like, thinking, like, how do you, like, dig deeper while not losing yourself in all the details?
Yeah. So it's about what you're looking for. You may have heard me talk about reading for structure.
Yes.
So when I'm looking to read for structure, I'm looking for the indications of the author's opinion or different viewpoints that are being presented, and who's advocating those viewpoints or opinions, if any.
Yeah, that's kind of also similar to what I was doing, because, by using my own language, I was like pointing out the logical structure behind this whole passage. But then, like, I just, like, sometimes I would just lose myself, like, in all the details. And also, like, for those analogy questions, you really gotta, like, learn, like, what is the structure behind it, and you find a similar structure in the answer choice. So, like, what is your suggestion on, like, how to practice, like, looking for the right things in the passage?
I would think about the passage like a big logical reasoning stimulus, or actually like several, because obviously it's a lot more words. You're looking to think about, why did the author include this here? What point were they trying to communicate? So a lot of times in reading comp, they'll ask about the role of the statement. Why is this sentence in the beginning of paragraph 2? The author includes this for what function? What function is it serving?
I see. Can you care to like dive deeper in what you just said?
Yeah, sure. So in reading comprehension passages, some of the tougher questions will ask you what function or what role a particular statement plays. And so that's equivalent to logical reasoning role of statement questions. So you're looking at it structurally. You're looking at it for the different pieces. What's evidence? What's conclusion? What's the general principle at play here? None of this regards the details, and none of this is even really about the topic itself. So when you're looking at the structure and you're looking at the claims, that's also integral to approaching it with the eye towards strengthening it or weakening it. You're strengthening a claim or weakening a claim. So you're thinking about, what's their evidence? What's their conclusion? What gap is present?
So I know like everyone has to start somewhere. So when you just started out, like how did you train yourself to like catch these, structures or patterns?
I think personally for me, reading comprehension came somewhat more naturally than the other sections, because I am a native speaker and was always big on reading my entire life. But when it came to the LSAT in particular, as to how this relates to logical reasoning, it's recognizing that reading comp and logical reasoning aren't really that different. A lot of folks, they will approach reading comprehension like it were an English class or like it were the SAT reading comp, which really is more about the content of the passage itself, seeing, can you read and comprehend? But reading comprehension isn't really about comprehension in terms of information, which I think people tend towards. It's really much more about seeing how they go about making their argument when they have more words to play with. When they have more words to play with, they can have more conclusions and more evidence for each conclusion, but they can also include lots more filler, lots more details in the evidence that really are not essential. So when you think about a sentence, and a sentence has a primary subject and primary verb, that's the main thrust of the sentence. They can include a lot of subclauses, which are details that could be interesting, could be nice to have, but are not really core to that sentence. Reading comprehension is that with 400 or 500 words. But again, lots of little parts that may not be essential, so I would not focus on those. I would instead simply go back to them when you need them later for a particular question.
I see. So what about the abstract passage? For example, there's one passage talking about intellectual property law. Like how do you make connection, or how do you like make sense like of it like in your brain? When it's talking about like really abstract things, when it's talking about like, a certain rule of law, or, the idea of free will or something like that. Yeah. Like how do you make sense of it?
I would look for examples they give to help you anchor this to a real world situation. So if it's about intellectual property, you could think about piracy online, for example, or Napster and MP3s. Whatever lets you better relate to it will make it easier to comprehend. So either they give you an example or you make up your own example, and I would hold on to that.
Okay. So what do you suggest like my training could be for this month? Because, obviously like I don't want to take a full exam, because I realize that like, taking a full exam doesn't help you improve. It only proves that you have improved. Like, get it? Like, so like, what do you suggest? Like, how do I, keep improving for this month? Because it's going to be my last LSAT, and I just really want to try my best to perform, the best I can. Yeah.
I would suggest that you look up the Socratic review method. I go in depth on how you should analyze your mistakes and everything that gives you trouble. And for someone at your point where you're already in the 170s. You do have that familiarity in the exam. And so applaud yourself for that. Have a certain level of confidence in your familiarity and your understanding up to this point. And now for everything that gives you trouble, everything you get wrong, everything you could have done more efficiently, really aim to dive deeper into where your misunderstanding stems from, the stimulus, the question stem, or the choices, or in reading comp and your approach to the passage as a whole from the beginning.
I see. Thank you so much. And my last question would be, like, what is your method of overcoming like test anxiety? Because I tend to get like really anxious, like, you know, right before the exam, like have trouble falling asleep and, you know, can't really concentrate on the questions. So like, what is your approach if you feel like really anxious on something?
Yeah, there are a number of things you could think about, but one thing I want to call out is you said this was your last opportunity.
Yes.
Why do you say it's your last opportunity?
Well, it's because I really want to apply this year. And, you know, after the August LSAT, I want to start working on my personal like statement and all that stuff. I am a person that I can't really work on two things at the same time. So I really don't have the confidence that I will have time to keep focusing on the LSAT while, you know, writing all my essays. So I would say this is my last LSAT.
How many hours do you plan to spend on your essays?
Ideally, like, I don't know, like, because, you know, this is obviously my first time applying to law school. So I was thinking like maybe 8 hours a day on writing. I don't know if that's realistic.
How many hours did you spend on your undergraduate admissions essays?
I spent not a lot of time. I would say like maybe like 3 hours a day.
Was it enough?
It in the hindsight, you know, my parents were helping me on like, you know, preparing for all the materials, but now like I only get myself, like, you know, I have to like pick the schools, like learn everything, right? You know, why certain law school essay, diversity statement, all that stuff. So to me, it feels really overwhelming because it sounds like I have a lot of things to do. That's why like I just feel that like I'm not going to have any time studying for the LSAT.
Is it possible for you to get support with your essays for law admissions?
For, you mean a consulting firm? Or what do you mean?
It could be support from anywhere. It could be a consulting firm. It could be other applicants.
Well, you know, the way they can help me is only to like give me feedback. It's really not like they can't really help me write anything. So I don't know how are they going to save my time in this sense.
I hear what you're saying. Now, it's possible that support from others and feedback from others could help you reach a final draft faster.
Definitely. But also, like, how do you know, like, what is your final draft? Because, you know, I always want to do things, you know, perfectly. So I don't know, like, maybe I'll drive myself crazy while writing the essays, just like how, like, when I'm studying for my LSAT, like, I want to do everything I can to reach a certain level. So yeah, so I really can't guarantee, like, you know, if that will help me reach my draft, like final draft quicker.
Well, first off, writing's never done. It's never perfect. Never
Yeah,
perfect.
that's true.
You simply decide that your draft is good enough and it achieves the purpose that you have for it. Feedback from others could save you some time by helping you get to a good result faster. So I wouldn't write it off. Someone else doesn't have to write the essay for you in order for them to be helping you to some extent. And then I would also want you to think about how important is the essays relative to the LSAT in the admission process overall.
Yeah, but I don't know because my GPA is like 3.53. So, you know, supposedly I'm a splitter. I don't know, like, you know, if how useful my personal application would be, like, you know, combined with my GPA and my LSAT. obviously I'm going to talk to admission officers or consulting companies to sort it out. But still, I just feel that I am not competitive enough in the applicant pool, especially when there are more 170 plus scores this year and more people are applying. So what is your take on my situation?
Well, the fact that things may be more competitive or not is beside the point. I'm not sure that relates to your decision about whether the upcoming LSAT is your final chance to take it versus how you spend time on your application essays. I see them being unrelated. Regardless of whether the cycle is more competitive or less competitive, your GPA is fixed. You can devote time to the upcoming LSAT and decide that upcoming LSAT is it, and then spend X hours a day on your application essays. Or you could say, maybe I will be open to the possibility of retaking the LSAT in October or in November. And then if that were the case, you might spend less time on the application essays, but it would be worth it. There are plenty of people who work on essays and their LSAT simultaneously. The essays could be a welcome break from some LSAT prep. And it could be that you can't spend 8 hours a day for 4 to 6 or 8 weeks doing nothing but essays. Good writing requires time where you put it away, don't touch it for a few days, come back with a fresh perspective. Or, as I said, have somebody else look at it and give you feedback because you can't see your own blind spots. And with writing as personal as this, it can help to have outside perspectives. So I would just challenge the idea that in order to do a good job on your essays, you need to do nothing else but essays. And if you could get a few more points on the LSAT by retaking, that may have a bigger impact than a little bit more time revising and editing.
I see. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the advice.
Of course. So I'm just challenging some assumptions there. Take some time and mull it over. I'm not saying you necessarily have to retake it, but the idea of being open to a retake could also help to reduce some of the stress associated with this particular upcoming LSAT, because while the LSAT as a whole is incredibly important, no one particular test date will make or break you, and you could always retake.
Yeah, it's a good argument. I'm definitely going to think about it since, if I retake again, I would sign up for the October ones, but it's just when the score comes out, it would be in November. And wouldn't that be a little too late to apply to, the top 14 schools?
No, it wouldn't be too late. You could take the November LSAT and still apply this cycle totally fine. And the October LSAT results will probably come back 2 to 3 weeks later. So they'd still come back in October itself. It wouldn't be that long a wait.
I see. Got it. Thank you.
Fantastic. I'm really glad we connected, Faye. Before we sign off, what would you say is the biggest insight you got from our call today?
Definitely the approach for 170 plus scores, because, you made me realize that I should have more confidence in myself. It's really not the familiarity of this test that's stopping me from, improving. It's really just how my mindset on how to get through this test is dragging my effort to improve.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that would be my.
Great. Well, keep at it and let me know if you need anything at all moving forward. I'm happy to help.
Thank you.
Of course. Take care. Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.